Hello and welcome to Jiyo Bangla. I'm Advaita Seth, and today I have a very special guest with me, Mrs. Pratima Nayar, the principal of Calcutta International School Junior Section. She is an educator for over 27 years. She is a leader in her sector and an inspiration for the people around her, parents and teachers and students alike. We are very lucky to have you today with us, ma'am.
Thank you.
A warm welcome to Jiyo Bangla.
Thank you.
So today we have gathered to discuss about how education has evolved over time, especially with the introduction of the online module of education, especially post the pandemic. So ma'am, to begin with, to start the discussion, my first question towards you would be, how do you think education has evolved, especially after the pandemic, with the introduction of the online mode of teaching?
First and foremost, thank you for having me here. It's a real pleasure. I think the pandemic has taught us many lessons, and I think one sector that has greatly been impacted by it has been the education sector. Education has always been evolving, but what the pandemic made us do was delve deeper into the use of technology.
Right.
How we could use technology and bring technology to support our learners, because for a brief period of time everything came to a standstill. We had children at home who were there for long periods of time. There was no learning that was happening, and I think what helped was it accelerated schools to explore intensely the use of technology and what sort of technology we need to use to support our learners at home. So I think that was something which was a huge game changer for us in the education sector.
Right. So how do you think a pandemic would have affected the education sector if online module of teaching and if digitalization of teaching did not take place?
Well, imagine a generation of learners who are getting no knowledge, who are getting no learning experiences in their homes. And we have to also remember that schools are also great agencies for social emotional development.
Right.
Apart from delivering academic content. So there is a lot of social when you
The
come to
holistic
schools.
growth
Absolutely.
that comes with schooling.
Absolutely. So when a student comes to school, it's also the human intervention, the human conversations, the human contact, which is important for us to evolve as human beings. So I think that's if the pandemic, we had learners who were at home deprived of education, and imagine a generation of learners who are getting no knowledge, who are deprived of human contact. Social emotional learning comes to a standstill. It does create a vacuum in society, and we see this that after the pandemic we are in fact even today grappling with situations where our children have come back to the school, but the levels of attention deficiency have increased. ADHD, ADD, hyperactivity, all these have increased because of the pandemic.
Because these are the issues which are to be addressed in school, and if
Absolutely.
children would have been sitting idle at home, I believe it would have been a big hindrance towards growth.
Absolutely.
And we were not prepared for it.
Yes.
So how have people like you, educators, adapted to such changes?
Well, like I said, some of us, we have been using technology prior to the pandemic as a teaching aid, as a tool to deliver our lessons. But what the pandemic taught us, what I must say, this generation of learners are much more advanced, because they
Right.
are, this is the Gen Z generation or the Gen X generation. Some of us took longer to use the tools of technology in delivering a lesson online. Some of us were already adept with it. So the pandemic helped us all to come onto the same page, intensively explore tools and different innovative teaching tools of how we could deliver lessons more effectively. So we had a combination of the human as well as technology and an amalgamation of both those to deliver our lessons online.
Like I'll draw lines from that. The amalgamation of digitalization and education, where gadgets come into play, the internet comes into play, the steady flow of internet that we have post 2016 internet revolution in India. Do you think it's a boon or a bane for the students, so to say?
I think it depends on the user. Technology could be a boon and it could be a bane.
Right.
It is totally depending on the individual user of how you use the technology. Too much of technology, we've seen what it leads to. There are enough scientific studies which show us, research is there which shows us is that we are bringing up a generation of learners who are very dependent on technology, unsupervised use of technology, which is impacting the cognitive thinking of the brain.
Exactly.
However, having said that, technology is also required. So that balance between how much to use, what to use, and when to use is something which we need to teach our
The
learners.
proper supervision.
Yes, absolutely.
Of
monitoring and supervision.
Yes. So how do you think that can be monitored? How do you think parents should, give them the freedom of using a gadget and also having control over their usage? How do you think that can be planned up? Because I believe most of our viewers are watching it on a digital platform itself. So it so might happen at times we overuse gadgets. We overuse, a resource that we have, for this matter, internet or the gadget that we're using. How do you think that can be monitored, especially by parents?
That's a very good and important question that you've asked. Is that what is happening is when children are as young as 2.5 to 3 years old.
Yes.
Parents,
their cognitive senses can be, hampered with extreme usage.
Absolutely. So we see this that now with the nuclear families coming into existence, both parents are working. Children are more on their own with caregivers. The easiest is to give a child at the age of 2.5 a gadget, an iPad, or
to keep them occupied.
To keep them occupied. And when the kids are having their lunch, you give them that and they're eating and they're watching these visuals. It starts as early as that. I think that's something which we need to be mindful of. Give them gadgets, but give time intervals, give breaks in between. Because I think parents also need to be educated that too much of gadgets at a very early age impacts the cognitive thinking of the brain. It impacts your abilities of socializing. Imagine a room where we all are on our gadgets, there is no human connection or conversations that are happening.
Rather, we are texting on WhatsApp.
We are always texting on WhatsApp. Right. So where is that human contact? Human beings are meant to communicate.
Have the eye
we
contact.
Are social beings.
Right.
Now that's all getting lost. So while I see these happening in our school situations, that very young children are given these gadgets and then they get used to these gadgets over a period of time. Empowering the children, making them aware, age-appropriate sessions with them on how much they need to use these gadgets, what to use, because there's everything available on the internet. Even when you give them a YouTube and they're looking at YouTube Reels, you see the moving images, they're moving so fast and you get hooked onto these reels.
Pretty
and
addictive they are.
Yes. So as a student grows, they don't know when to stop and then it becomes an addiction. We have so many rising cases of addiction to the digital platform.
Which would certainly not, add on to the positivity of it.
Exactly. Okay. So then you're creating a generation of learners who are isolated and that leads to anxiety, it leads to depression, it leads to other psychological issues. Also, I think as parents, we need to model behavior. So just to give you an example, which I give all my parents is, you need to have conversations where there are gadget-free conversations. Dinner time, meal time should be gadget-free. But often we say that to our children, but we as adults are attending to that official call or we are on our laptop. What are our children learning from us? So we need to model behavior which we want our children to follow.
Right. So this steady flow of, you were talking about Reels, YouTube, steady flow of internet. So do you think that it can have a very negative impact on the students?
Yes.
Especially at a very young age?
Yes.
They consume it a lot?
Yes, it can. Again, like I said, it depends on the content of what they're watching.
Right.
So nowadays, what we also see amongst children is that there are all these reels that are coming up where certain behavior is glorified. And these are impressional minds we're talking about. They want to emulate that behavior in the school context or in a social context. And, when you put a like, the ratings go up and students think this is acceptable. So I think it's
The
very
social acceptance
social
comes into play.
Correct. So I think it all just comes down to whatever student is being exposed to, whether it's a YouTube reel or anything on the internet. It needs to be age appropriate, it needs to be monitored, and the students need to be aware and mindful of what they are watching. So that awareness, capacity building needs to be built up in our students.
Right. So we were talking about YouTube. So I'll come to that. Not only for children who are in the junior section, maybe in the senior section as well, in college, people who are studying for competitive exams, YouTube plays a big role in it right now. So there's a overflow of content. With good comes bad, and then there's overflow of content. How do you think students at a very early age should be, warned about that? What is your perspective on the overflow of content that there is on YouTube and other platforms?
Content overflow, just before I answer that question, I would like to say one more thing is that, see, now with internet, we all have the internet, we all have gadgets, right? We are able to voice our opinions easily. We can if we have recording devices, we can record something, we can share our knowledge with the wider world as well. That's another positive side of having all these platforms. But overflow of content again is that these gadgets, they captivate the human mind. So when you watch something for a short interval of period, the reel is so short, but it leaves you in suspense, and then you want to go on to the next reel.
Right.
So there's a lot of interplay of psychology which is formulated when these reels are made. I think when you talk about how we can monitor the overflow of content, the only way is constant conversations, constant awareness sessions with parents, with teachers, with the students. That's the only way. We bring our counselors on board. We talk about the flip side of the overflow of content and what it can do to the human brain.
Because those small reels are very addictive.
Absolutely.
People are not watching 20 minutes long videos like they used to do 4 or 5 years back. They have switched to watching 30-second reels, which are pretty addictive, and they're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
Yeah.
And before you know, you have already spent an hour.
Yeah. So imagine you've spent, taking your point, you spent an hour because you're scrolling up and down. You're sitting with that gadget for nearly an hour, right? In a certain spot. Imagine what the impact it's doing to your brain. The fast moving images, and science has shown us, research talks about that these fast moving visual images with changing color patterns do impact the cognitive thinking of children from a very young age, which does lead to certain other...
Right. And what about the mental well-being? How important is that when it comes into play?
I'm a strong advocacy of mental well-being, and I'm a huge promoter of social and emotional learning and mental well-being. And I think schools play a very critical role in this area.
Providing a comfort space both to the students and the parents.
Absolutely. And I cannot emphasize that how critical it is that the way we take care of our physical well-being, taking care of the brain is equally, if not more important. So, schools need to have regular sessions. I think it's important that we have counselors or trained specialists in this field who come regularly and have sessions with our children, with our parents, with our faculty. So the entire community is on the same page. And it's important, the importance of spending time by yourself without gadgets. How often are we doing that? How often are we looking at pausing?
Practicing that, right?
Looking at nature. Just look out of the window and see, and just imagine what we are blessed to have such a beautiful day. How much are we doing that? We always seem to be working in like machines. We become like machines. Which is
constantly in a flow, running towards something.
Absolutely. Whether it is you have a device in front of you, whether you're on the phone, whether it's a gadget, whether it's a TV, we are always addicted to gadgets, right? How much are we looking and absorbing what is around us? So I think mental well-being is first in priority. Everything else
comes
follows
next
after that. Yeah.
Right. So how do you personally here at Calcutta International School deal with the balance that you're talking about? The balance that the teachers teach the students, that the parents need to be aware of in order to for a sustainable growth of the children. How do you deal with that balance?
So, like I said, at CIS, we have a very robust counseling department. We have 3 counselors in our entire school, and these counselors are regularly, periodically going into our classrooms, and they just sit in the classrooms and observe children to see how children are in a classroom context. We have regular sessions, age appropriate, around the calendar year of the school. Some of these sessions I can talk about are on bullying, cyber safety, healthy eating, digital device, screen time, the impact of all this on the brain. We talk about mindfulness and we practice mindfulness. It's part of a lesson in our timetable that we do.
Right.
We also have a curriculum called social emotional learning, where we focus on the affective part of the human brain, dealing with feelings and emotions. So these are sessions which are ongoing for all our stakeholders on a regular basis.
Ma'am, as education is evolving and how we see that how technology has come into play, so how do you think the digital divide be addressed from an administrative point of view, and from a teacher's perspective? How do you think in society the digital divide should be dealt with?
You see, living in a metro, we do have access to facilities. But I'm thinking about villages and tier 3 communities, tier 3 villages and local communities where we do not have electricity, leave alone internet. I think government needs to lay more emphasis on building infrastructure in these communities. And I think corporates could use a proportion of their CSR fund in providing education and if we want education to reach to every citizen of our country, and we are promoting it through the form of digital platforms as well. First of all, we need to ensure that the basics infrastructure should be there. Yes. So I think corporates could use a substantial portion of their CSR funding in helping building up these communities, providing them with the basic internet facilities, and then we can move on to the digital tools of technology, the basic tools of technology to aid in the teaching learning process.
Right. You are talking about tools. On that, how do you think AI can come into play?
Oh, AI.
And facilitate the education process beyond age and beyond boundaries of a classroom.
So in fact, AI, we are in a very interesting stage in education where a lot of AI is being used in the education sector.
Right.
Just to give you a few examples, we use AI in helping us devise our lesson unit plans. We use AI in creating immersive learning experiences in the classroom, so replicating real life experiences through AI into the classroom, through again our unit plans. We use AI for data evaluation, looking at student evaluation and feedback forms. Portions of AI are also being used in the curriculum. We're teaching that in the curriculum. For example, you see ChatGPT is being used now very extensively, which helps us to cut down on, it helps us in research. So it's an exciting phase, and a lot of schools like us, we are incorporating components of AI to even build our teaching resources and make the classroom environment as realistic as the real world. So we're bringing the real world into the classroom.
Right. So how do you envision the trajectory of growth and the trajectory of evolution when it comes to education? And what do you think it would mean for the students and the parents?
The trajectory, I would say, is that I think schools have already started. So just to give you examples of, like I said, we are using a lot of components of AI, age appropriate, into building them into units of learning and teaching. But having said that, again, I say the focus has to be on EQ and SQ as well. So that balance is important. A lot of schools are now using components called coding. We have coding in our classrooms as part of our curriculums, teaching them how to build robotics is a very important part of our curriculum. So these are all
a lot of new avenues which can be explored.
Yes, so these are all AI driven technologies which we are incorporating in the teaching learning process. In fact, last week we partnered with an organization in Chennai, and our kids did an entire workshop for 5 days
Right.
on building robots and coding Python. So schools are now moving towards, and again we're looking at it towards also these kids learning these skills which will drive them towards future careers, because these are now careers that are open for our students.
Right. So we spoke extensively about balance, and I would like to end this conversation on a note by asking you, what would be your suggestions towards parents, young parents, how to maintain this balance with digitalization, education, and the factor of touch, like you mentioned before?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Well, I think for young parents, I would say technology is there. We cannot do without technology. Let's admit it, and let's embrace it as a friend instead of a foe. But again, it's about how we use technology. So small suggestions for young new parents is that spend some time with your child, without any technology. And you need to model that behavior. Like I said, spend some time at home where you're just talking to your children, where you're just talking about anything it would be, so that they learn that human touch of conversations, looking into the eye.
Right.
And that starts from the very young age. And have time intervals for how much technology you are going to use in a day, right? You have to have buffers and timings. Another thing we do is we keep our phones next to us all the time. I think the phones have become more important than anything.
Yes.
So have a no phone time at home. If you practice these things at home, children will model this behavior. So I think it's up to us as parents, as the adults,
To shape them.
to shape the young generation. It's not the children. Also, I would like to say that creating the awareness of digital safety, because the more we use technology, we are leaving a digital footprint.
Right.
And kids need to know that. So we had a session with our kids when a lot of our kids are on Facebook and on different, on Insta and
Social
things
media
like that,
platforms.
social media platforms. It's important for these kids to know, the implications of being on these platforms, because it's opening up an entire world where you're communicating with people who you don't even know, what sort of content you're sharing with them, because your whole life now is on social media.
And beyond social boundaries.
And beyond social boundaries. So we had people from the cybercrime department. They come every year to our school and they tell our students the dangers of leaving a digital footprint on these social media platforms, and how you need to mindfully use these platforms. I think these sessions are extremely important for not only students but even for parents, to make them aware. We see so many things happening, scams and frauds are happening through using of the digital platform.
Right.
So this awareness session, I think, is very important, and then it needs to be consistent and ongoing.
Right. Thank you so much for this enriching session, ma'am.
Thank you so
for being
much.
on Jiyo Bangla. It was lovely interacting with you. I believe my viewers have also loved watching this episode. And for more such videos, keep watching Jiyo Bangla.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.